Well, thanks for joining me, Megan.
Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. Well, so you're a zoologist, and I wondered, have you got a group of animals that particularly interest you? Because zoologist is such a broad term, and obviously you like lots of animals, but I wondered if there was a particular group that you're like, they are absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, well, lots of different groups, and every time I find out more information, I think that group changes quite frequently because I get new favourites all the time. But I guess kind of the area that I have most experience in is kind of predatory behaviour and kind of social intelligence of different
Okay.
animals. So I've been really lucky to kind of work a lot with the illegal wildlife trade and with wildlife rehabilitation, particularly of big predators.
Okay.
So big cats from ex circus. I've worked with bears from the bear bile industry. I've researched sharks. So these kind of big megafauna predators, I guess, is what I've had most hands-on experience. But for me, it's the kind of the little scientific gems about that physiology, everything that appeals to me and gets me excited as well.
Yeah, I think it's easy to get kind of caught up in the swept of big predators, isn't it? And often, I'm a champion of the little guys, but
Yeah.
if it's a big scary animal with teeth, you can't help but be fascinated, can you?
No, I think they've just got this allure, really, that you kind of just drawn into kind of wanting to understand them. Um, but no, I am also a very big champion of the little guys, more and more, I have to say. And yeah, I'm equally as excited by them as anything else.
I guess as well with the UK because we don't have anything big and scary with teeth, or not really. It is quite fascinating when you do look abroad. I think people live with these animals, these big scary stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It makes us kind of, when we're kind of complaining about human wildlife conflicts, what we don't come up with lions and hyenas every day. So,
Not normally, no.
no, not, no, very, very on the odd occasion. Yeah, no, so we really have no big wildlife conflicts to, in my opinion anyway. We do have quite a lot of sharks around UK waters, which a lot of people don't really appreciate or understand very much, but we get up to about 40 different species, some which are here all year long, some which kind of come and go. And so, our oceans are fantastic places and often overlooked as well.
Have you done any work with UK sharks? I was talking to Sarah Roberts. I think you know Sarah actually, don't you?
Yeah, she's a
And
good
we
friend. Yeah.
we did a blue shark trip together. A few of us, not just me. There was a few of Lizzie Daly and a few other kind of characters, and we tried to get blue sharks off Pembrokeshire. Unfortunately, we didn't see any, but I remain hopeful to get some at some point because there's, like you said, there's 40 odd species, not just blues, makos. I'm not sure if I'd want to see a mako. That might my heart might.
Really?
Well, I'd like to see one, but not not too close.
Oh, I'd love it. I'd absolutely love it. No, I mean, I've recently been working on a project around UK sharks. So I've just been filming for a new series which is coming out hopefully in the spring for CBBC. And my role in my episode of the series is to explore kind of the problems with shark persecution and how the UK actually has a direct role in that. So we
Yeah.
were filming with blue sharks, and yeah, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, we had a chap called Matt Briley on, who I don't know if you know him, but he's been doing a lot of work with campaigning for that. So I didn't realise the extent of the problem in the UK with sharks. Like we've almost created a fishery for them by accident, haven't we? With the whole, I remember this correctly now. That you can't just bring the fins; you have to bring the whole shark back. So then that's encouraging people to catch sharks, and obviously that's not good either. So it's not a great situation.
Yeah, you have to land them, and I mean, the hot topic with sharks is always finning, and that is, a huge issue, and one that in the UK we can bring up to 20 kilograms of shark fin in for personal allowance, which is shocking. But there are other, bigger potentially issues facing sharks. Shark meat trade is really big. And also, the trawlers, bycatch is also a huge problem. Recreational fishing in some areas is a huge problem, particularly for sensitive species like scalloped hammerhead and greater hammerhead. So, yeah, there's lots of different facets and pressures facing these animals, which is, causing the decline, which is, really rubbish to see.
Yeah, they're such a charismatic creature, aren't they? No one wants to see them go down. You mentioned earlier about the beer barn. I want to talk about that because I think that's one of the first films that you did for TV, wasn't it? And that was Undercover Tourist. And for those that don't know, then, so what is beer bile? Like, what is the trade, and why is it? Well, I say why is it a problem? It should be fairly obvious why it's a problem, but what is it and why is it an issue?
So the bear bile industry is something which is kind of predominant in areas of Asia. So in particular, China, Vietnam, and Laos are the kind of the three countries that really kind of invest in it, I suppose. And what happens is, depending on the country, there's slightly different regulate, slightly different kind of practices, I suppose, depending on where you are. But either kind of the bears are caught from the wild if you're in Vietnam or Laos, or they are bred if you're in China, because for some reason breeding has been unsuccessful in captivity in Laos and Vietnam, but for some reason China have been able to do it, which is interesting, in these farms. And when we're talking about bears, we're typically, in this situation, typically talking about Asiatic black bears, sometimes Tibetan browns and sun bears too, but predominantly Asiatic black bears. And they're the most beautiful things. I think Mickey Mouse was kind of designed around them because they've got these gorgeous, round ears and this moon crescent on their chest. And they're declining massively from their ranges, but and more people have them in their kitchens than there are in the wild. So they're kept in these awful conditions. Like, I've never seen anything like it. Often in cages that are so small that they're unable to turn around, and they can live up to 30 years. And they are just constantly treading on the bars, so their pads are all ripped up and sore. They're biting on the bars, stereotypic behavior, because they're stressed, they're pacing. They're kind of fed this antibiotic sludge because of the bear bile extraction process, and this is exactly why they're being kept, is to extract bear bile. And that's a kind of bile that's held in the gallbladder, which helps. It's like a digestive fluid, but it's kind of a traditional Chinese medicine to extract it, and for kind of men to drink it in vodka for an aphrodisiac, also to rub it on joints that are causing some kind of pain, because unfortunately it has been proven that bear bile does have anti-inflammatory properties. However, there are better plant synthetic alternatives.
Yeah, it's not like the rhino horn situation where it's just keratin and there's nothing there. But obviously, take a paracetamol. Don't hurt a bear is the preferred option.
Exactly that. And in Vietnam and Laos, the whole thing is totally illegal, but it is expensive to keep a bear. So you're not going to keep a bear and kind of purchase the cheap antibiotics to keep it from getting infected in its stomach, because the process of extraction is really awful. Either the bear has a catheter in its stomach the entire time in a bag, which is held around like this harness, so the bile is constantly dripping out into this bag, or when the bile's in demand and the customer turns up, the farmer goes and kind of lies under and kind of basically keeps injecting, putting needles up into the abdomen of the bear, and it's incredibly painful and incredibly damaging process, for the psychology of the bear, and for its physical health as well. And it's really sad. So I went and actually volunteered with Animals Asia, which are a charity I absolutely adore, in China, and I spent 3 to 4 months working there, helping to rehabilitate the bears. And my job as a behavioural specialist was to kind of figure out how I could make their environment a little bit better. They had the most amazing enclosures, because these bears unfortunately can never be put back into the wild because of the torment that they've had. So they're kept in these enclosures, but they are the most magnificent kind of enclosures that you could wish for. They are huge, and they've got the most amazing enrichment programs. So they're incredibly lucky bears to have had the veterinary treatment and the space that they have now. And so from that point I came home, and I was really affected by the story. I didn't actually get to go to a farm in China, but then I got contacted by a friend of mine who worked at BBC telling me about the series, and one of their stories had actually fallen through. And did I have any ideas about what they could cover? And I said, well, I've just got back from China, why don't we go out and do bears? So before I knew it, we were out in Vietnam filming in the farms and going undercover, which was
by chance, really, then.
It was through kind of conversations and kind of pitching ideas and suggestions. And I never went into it wanting to be like a presenter necessarily. I wanted to kind of help with the storytelling and be in whatever position I could be to help where I'm best suited, and it kind of just happened naturally, which has been really fun.
It must have been quite hard, I guess, because you obviously love animals and you're going to be empathetic towards them. So was it hard to kind of to keep it in, or can you not help it? Do you just kind of let the emotions out when you see these horrific conditions?
It is hard. It is definitely hard. I've done quite a few different undercover pieces here and there now, and they are challenging, definitely. I think when you're in it and you're kind of confronted with a pretty nasty sight, like the bears in the cages, or I've worked in Cyprus and Malta with the songbird slaughter, and when you see things like that, I'm angry. I'm really angry and disappointed, but also I'm quite numb to it, because for me, I'm there to do a job and I want to expose it, and so for me, I kind of take it all in, and I can deal with it when I get back, on a kind of a personal level, because it's more important to do it. But it is hard, and those are some of the images and some of the individuals and things that I've seen, will haunt me for a very long time, because it isn't the nicest of sights, for sure.
No, definitely not. I mean, I've seen some of this stuff with the dog trade in China, and it breaks my heart. I just can't. It's one of those things. I know you should watch it, but I can't make my way through the videos because it's pretty soul destroying. And then I've got my dog sat next to me looking up at me, and I'm like, oh my god, can't deal with it. It's not great. And you recently joined the Springwatch team. So what was that like? Like, kind of, I guess it's a fraternity now. It's the biggest nature show in the UK. So joining that must have been amazing.
Oh, so much fun. It is, it's a real big family, and full of people who are really excited by, the latest science and science communication to bring it out to kind of the nation. And I think, like, to join this year has been really special because it has been such a hard year with lockdown and COVID. Everyone's been in, really difficult situations facing this crisis. So to join the team now at a kind of a poignant time when the watches are still able to go out, which is a brilliant technical feat because we're all doing it from different locations, but everyone's not in one hub anymore, we're all dotted around the country. It is really kind of special for me because it's nice to be able to provide people with a little bit of kind of escapism into the natural world, and they can hopefully forget about the news headlines, forget about the awful things that have probably come out that day based on what the history has been like the last kind of few months, and kind of lose themselves in the natural world, which really helps our mental health. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, finding out new things, talking to the scientists and conveying them.
It's been I mean, I don't know what the viewing figures have been like, but it seems to have worked really well. Like, it was, I remember, because I do the odd thing for the watches here and there, and I remember they weren't really sure how it was going to work and if people would take to the new format. And it seems, if anything, to be, I don't want to say better because that's not the right way of putting it, but it's worked really well. Like, kind of going to the different presenters and seeing what they've been doing, and the mindful moments, that kind of nice serene couple of minutes. The whole format seems to be going pretty good.
Yeah, I think so. I think people have responded really well, which is really lovely. Everyone's been incredibly welcoming and loving the new format, as you say. I think it's nice because everyone gets like a snapshot of what's going on around the UK, because we're all isolated in our little kind of very local areas. We get to know the local areas really well, which is really great because we're seeing more of what's on our doorstep. But it is nice to be able to kind of be transported to Wales or Scotland or wherever the films are, just to get an idea of actually what does this period of time look like in all these places.
Yeah.
So I think that's a nice element.
I guess as well, it shows that it's happening everywhere, because you are, if you are in your little local bubble, your mind doesn't tend to expand too much, I suppose. But then it's like, oh, actually, it's happening in that little village in Scotland, or it's happening in that place in Wales or whatever. So it's a countrywide thing that's happening.
Exactly. I think there's like a comfort in that, in a weird
way.
Whilst we're all disconnected, it's nice to know that everyone is connected with like a kind of a shared passion for wildlife, whether that's kind of a renewed thing and you're a seasoned kind of wildlife veteran, or whether maybe it's something entirely different and new. So yeah, whilst we're all disconnected, I think we're kind of connecting over a new love for the environment, I suppose.
Yeah, and that nicely segues into my next question, which is the Self-Isolation Bird Club. So you obviously set that up with Chris, which I'll come on to in a second. But what was the response like from that? Because again, it's kind of it's in a similar vein to Springwatch, but it's more with social media, and you're kind of connecting with lots of people on a local level, aren't you? Well, nationally, not local, but people on the ground, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, it was something unexpected for everyone, including Chris and myself.
Yeah.
Because we didn't, ever anticipate to kind of really create the Self-Isolating Bird Club. It almost happened by accident, to be honest. I remember kind of, because I moved in with Chris at the start of the first lockdown in March, just so we could continue to work together on various projects. And I remember kind of waking up in the morning, and he was, it was quite early, and he was sat in a patch of celandines when I looked out the window into the garden. And he was, had his phone up and he was chatting away. And I thought, it's a bit odd, but we are talking, so anything goes. Who knows what could be going on? And he came into the house and I asked him, what are you doing? He's like, well, the celandines have just come out, and, he was thinking about people who might not have access to green space, people who might not have access to gardens. And when he came out and saw those celandines, it put a smile on his face. So he wanted to kind of show people that and try and share a little bit of joy from it. So he started doing these kind of miniature Facebook lives every day, I think twice a day for about 4 days, and then he had to go away to work. And this is before it was really strict lockdown in March, so we were all kind of staying at home, but it wasn't quite as rigorous. He was still able to go out and work. And he went out to do a job, and I took over for the day. And I remember being quite nervous about it, which to me seems silly now because having done the watches and everything, doing a kind of live is kind of, is all right. And yes, then we started doing them together. Initially, we were doing them twice a day, and then we decided to do kind of a whole hour show every day for lockdown. And I think we broadcast every day over the space of at least 6 or 7 weeks. Without Saturdays, Sundays, whenever. We just wanted to kind of bring wildlife to the nation. So, and actually further afield, it had quite an international audience, which was quite exciting as well. And we were showing, we live in the New Forest, so lots of wildlife. We were showing things that was going on our doorstep. There was slow-mo poodle action.
What more do you want?
Right? Yeah. We don't need anything more than slow-mo poodle. We could do a whole hour on poodles. But then we wanted to kind of incorporate like everyone else and what everyone was going through. So we got live guests in from different places around the world to talk to us about what was going on their doorsteps. And it became this big community, and people just started supporting each other, asking wildlife questions on the Facebook page, and starting up these really important conversations over a united love for wildlife. It was brilliant to see.
There seems to have been, during the first lockdown, there was this creative boom from lots of different people in the kind of wildlife media industry. And I guess partly because they maybe lost a lot of work and they had bugger all else to do. But it was great to see that, and it kept people going. Like this podcast started then. I mean, I've been meaning to do one for ages, and I just thought, well, I've got sod all else, so I might as well start this.
Yeah.
And there's loads of people that did things. There was Nina Constable did some nice little films, and a few people, and they were great to see that. And a lot of people have carried on as well. It didn't seem to just be a one-off thing, which is nice to see. I mean, like Self-Isolation Bird Club is still going on strong now, isn't it?
Yeah, once a week we still do it. It's nice to see, all this creativity. I think everyone kind of, jobs started getting cancelled. My diary emptied out. So did everyone else's. And you can't travel anymore. Everything kind of had a bit of a hiatus for a while whilst everyone figured out what to do before kind of we realised, Zoom's a thing. And I think people really kind of got into new hobbies and new projects, which was brilliant to see. Like everyone started learning to paint or learning to play music or doing those brilliant wildlife films, which were, and still are fantastic, and they're still being produced. And I think everyone's just kind of got a willingness to try and make social media a bit more of a happy place by sharing the wildlife in the garden, because everyone's fed up of the bad news by now, I think. So it's good to have.
I mean, I remember when social media was just kind of cat videos and bits like that, and now it's just
wait for breakfast, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it just seems such a negative space now. I mean, Facebook's awful, probably the worst out of the lot. I mean, Instagram seems relatively happy still, but it can be bad. So it is nice to have like glimmers of hope every now and again to remind you that there are some good things happening and some good people trying to make a difference as well.
Yeah, lots of good things and lots of good people. So it's just kind of connecting with them, I think, and just try and kind of limit the amount you see of the bad stuff as much as possible.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you made a bit of a star out of Indy Green. He only lives like half an hour from me, so he's a little legend. Like we went bird watching. When would it have been? I think just after the first lockdown stopped. I didn't realize how young he was. Like, he was only like 15. I was like, and he knows so much. Incredibly passionate young man.
He's incredible. He's one of my absolute heroes. I met him a few months ago, when I went up to. I was looking at hen harriers, and then I went over to the Peak District to try and find the bearded vulture when it was still around.
Yes, yeah.
And of course, Indy was kind of the king of the bearded vulture.
That was his title. Yeah.
Yeah, and pretty much. That's what he's known on Twitter as now. But yeah, he had so many great sightings of it, and I kind of said to him, "Oh, we need to go and see it, and we can film it, and we can do something for Self-Isolation Bird Club." And we got there, and we could only be there for a few hours. And it just started raining really badly. Like the painful rain.
Yeah.
Where it just drenched through, and it's needles, and we were at the top of this peak, and Indy and I were just kind of sat there shivering with binoculars. It's not coming out. We both knew it because the weather was so bad, but we just didn't want to give up hope. And I was so impressed by his knowledge, his amazing ability to see every bird within a,
It's superhuman, isn't it?
It's superhuman skill. I'm really not brilliant at it at all. And he's, you know, looking at little black dots over there and saying it's this and that's a female, that's a male, and it's just like, how do you even see it? I can't even see the black dot, let alone be able to sex the species. So yeah, he's an absolute hero, definitely.
He's a good guy. I was very careful at the beginning not to simply introduce you as the stepdaughter of Chris Packham. And I wondered, do you get that a lot? Do you get a lot of people just going, and here's Chris Packham's stepdaughter, rather than this is Megan McCubbin? And I wondered, is it something that, not frustrating, that's not the right word, I'm not painting it as a negative thing, but is it something that can, you get a lot, or are you kind of happy to be associated with Chris? I assume you are. I mean, if you live with him, you probably like him somewhat. But yeah, but you know what I mean. I'm trying to word this in a way that doesn't make it sound like I'm trying to cause a rift, because that's not my intention. But
no,
but yeah, like, would you rather stand on your own 2 feet, or are you kind of happy to be lumped in with Chris, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
yeah. I mean, it's actually interesting. I've done a lot of interviews over the last year, and you're the first person to actually ask me this.
Well, I bet they all wanted to, but they probably couldn't work out a way of not sounding like an arsehole asking it. And I'm not trying to be that arsehole. I'm just trying to, yeah.
I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did ask.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Chris and I have the best relationship. We get along really well. I think we complement each other, you know, its strengths and weaknesses brilliantly, because we understand each other, known him forever. So, you know, there's not really a person on the planet that I know better than him, and vice versa. So I know, and I really love working with him because he is so fun, and you know, to be able to work with, you know, going into zoology, you know, who better to work with than him, because he's got the most amazing brain, and I'll often sit there and he'll reel off some facts, and I'll just be mind blown all over again by his capacity for information. So I love working with him. I really, really do. But I do get introduced a lot as Megan McCubbin, Chris Packham's stepdaughter. And it's fine. I don't mind. You know, I'm in my early stages of my career, and that's brilliant. And, you know, knowing Chris is a huge privilege. I'm very aware of the privilege that I've had, having, you know, knowing the people that he knows, you know, around the BBC, and also the experiences that he's kind of given me by travel and, you know, seeing wildlife up close. I'm very kind of self-aware of that. You know, and I'm not naive enough to say that, you know, it hasn't helped open doors, because I'm sure it has. You know, I've known the film crews for forever. I've been, you know, 2 years old running around, you know, on set of these things, and I've been on the Watchers sets many times. So I'm very aware that I'm incredibly lucky to have that, and I'm incredibly grateful to him for giving me those opportunities. You know, I think as time goes on, you know, I'll be doing more stuff, you know, on my own, and that's certainly happening. With Winter Watch this year, it's happening, and you know, I'm doing kind of more and more independent things, which is great, because I have done a lot of independent things. It's just the stuff that I'm now more known for has been next to Chris, which is great, and I love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do get introduced a lot as
yeah. I can imagine. We had, do you know Lindsay McRae? Do you know where? So we had him on the podcast, and we were chatting about this, and I asked him the question, like, is it who you know or what you know? And he said, to a degree, it's who you know, but you've got to have the skills to back it up. So let's say someone opens a door for you, you've still got to be competent, and you've still got to do the job. So I wouldn't let that, you know, I wouldn't think that as a negative thing at all, because you're still obviously competent, because you're still doing things on your own, and you're being successful at it. So I was really worried about that question. I thought, how am I going to ask this without sounding like a dick? So I'm glad that you were
not at all.
Good stuff. And also, you're a wildlife photographer as well, which, you know, that's so my main job is I'm a wildlife cameraman and a wildlife photographer. That's what kind of keeps me going. And I was having a look on your Instagram, and there are a lot of penguins and a few other bits and bobs. So I wondered, have you got a favourite subject? What do you like photographing?
Well, penguins are good because they, you know, you can get up close. They don't, you know, really run away from you. They're not really used to people, so they're kind of a subject that you can really immerse yourself in, and you don't have to wait for hours for, you know, a fleeting appearance, because once you're in a colony, I mean, there's hundreds and thousands, and they're everywhere, and they're noisy, coming up and pecking your Wellingtons, pecking your camera. So actually, as a species, I mean, that's quite a useful thing, and it's quite nice to kind of play with the exposure with the snow, and, you know, that environment is very kind of beautiful and scenic. So I do really enjoy photographing them, but I mean, it's a bit of an easy one in a way. Because
there's nothing wrong with easy, is there? I mean, I'm definitely all for making my life easier, as long as I can.
Definitely, but in terms of the subject, you know, if you're going to go out to take photos, they're a good kind of species to take good photos of. You can get good photos quite easily.
Yeah.
And there's lots of things that I'd love to go and photograph. I mean, I haven't done much kind of in the tropics. I'd love to go, I don't know, and photograph some of the smaller, maybe like the dart frogs or something. Quite.
Oh,
I've got
okay.
I've got all these visions in my head of images that I'd like to someday take, and I think like planning is part of
Yeah.
photography, because I always have an idea of before I'm going on a trip or before I start a project. I've always got a very distinct kind of line of what I'd like, whether
Yeah.
that's a background or something creative. And I think that's kind of half the battle, is knowing what you want, so then you're not distracted by everything once you are there in that environment.
No, I'd agree with that. I'm the same. I like to. I'm crap at drawing, but I like to sketch out ideas. So I'll have a think like, oh, this would be a good composition, or this would be a good wide angle, or something like that, and then I'll try and get as close to that as I can. And I think that definitely helps your photography, rather than just wandering around aimless. It's nice to wander around aimlessly. I do it often, but it's nice to have an idea of what you want and then
Yeah.
try and get as close to that as possible.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. I mean, I don't go as far as to drawing it out, but maybe I'll try it. I think
You're
I have
probably a
heard.
better artist than me, Megan. But yeah, I find it's probably dyslexia as well. It helps because I'm dyslexic. That kind of helps me kind of figure it out, I guess. I don't know.
I'm dyslexic too, so it might be quite useful.
Yeah, try it. Give it a go.
Good to
And
learn.
well, you've kind of answered it there. But I was going to say, have you got a place that you'd really like to go and take images? But presumably where there's lots of dart frogs.
Yeah, I really like dart frogs. I've always, I remember being captivated them when I first saw them at Marwell Zoo in Southampton when I was young, and I just think that they're the most kind of beautiful little things. I'd love to go and kind of take some kind of arty, abstract photos of them, because I think they look quite Art Deco and
They
quite
do.
cool.
Yeah. Is it right that they're poisonous because of the ants they eat? So if you don't feed them ants, they're not poisonous. Is that right?
I
Or
believe so. I believe there's like if there's slightly different variations of the dart frog, and
okay.
kind of slightly depends. But I think
Yeah.
I'm not a dart frog expert, but I'm going to go and look it up afterwards just to double
Yeah,
check.
I'll just recommend that if people do come across a dart frog, don't pick it up if you think it's not been eating ants. I don't want to be responsible for dart
Yeah,
frog related incidents if we can help it.
stay clear of the dart frogs,
Yeah,
definitely.
definitely. They are awesome little things, though. And I'll kind of end on this then. So, what would you suggest if someone really wants to make a difference and help the environment? Because you obviously do a lot of campaigning, you do a lot of work, whether it's um, larger environment issues, more local issues. So, if someone thinks, I want to try and do something to make a difference, what would you recommend that they can do?
There's lots of things that people can do on very different scales. I mean, some of the small things is just make your immediate environment more wildlife friendly. Put a hedgehog highway in. Put a little pond in. When I say pond, you don't have to go and dig out, a huge area of earth. You can just sink a washing up bowl. Make sure you put a little kind of ladder in there so things can get in and out, and some stones for hiding, and various different things. Aquatic plants are good. And just try and make your, garden slightly more wild. And we've got this idea that everything has to be neat with perfect edges and lawns, which is ultimately just kind of a monoculture with not much biodiversity. And so let things go a little bit wild, and you'll see the benefits of it. But I'd say, on a larger scale, lifestyle choices are really important. Try and cut down on meat consumption. Don't you don't have to do it all together, but maybe one meal. Every little step is worth a celebration. Everything's important. Cycle on your bike rather than get the car. And one thing on an even larger scale is, use your voice. Click share on social media. Talk to your friends. Get in contact with your local MP. I think mine's, got hundreds of emails from me. Probably not a favourite person. But get in contact and talk about the issues that you care about. Contact your ministers, get discussing the issues with them, because if they don't know that it's an issue, then it's not going to change. So every person has the power to make a difference. We've just got to stand up and use our voices and be unified, because together, that's where the power is.
No, I agree. I think there's lots of things, and it can be a little bit doom and gloom sometimes. Like you said, particularly on about the news earlier. And there
Yeah,
are little, it's the little things that make the difference at the end of the day. And whether you think, oh, there's no point if I'm just one person doing it, but it's not going to be just one person at the end of the day. Hopefully, there's going to be lots of people all joining in, and that collectively will make change, or believe that. Hopefully,
yeah, and you don't have to be perfect. I think there's this expectation that you have to be, to be eco, you have to do everything, right, and you have to look into everything, research everything, look at the like. No, not at all. You just have to do little steps here and there. everything is, you know, is worth doing. You know, even if you get up that day and you've done, you know, one tiny thing different, you know, from the previous day, the previous month, because you have, you know, thoughts about its environmental impact, then that is something that is better, and we want to keep moving in that direction. So little steps, or big steps if you really want, which would be fantastic, but little steps are equally good too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've just gone, so I did meatless Mondays, and now I've gone to 2 days a week, and I'm just kind of steadily increasing it and just see how I go. I don't know if I'll go completely, but I think that's the hard sell. A lot of people get mixed up sometimes with the whole vegan thing. That even if you just cut it out half the week or just a bit, it'd still make a massive difference. And you know, you'd be surprised the amount of substitutes. There's a lot of meals now that I have, and I'm like, you don't really miss the meat. You know, without turning this into a cookery podcast, but things like bean fajitas and lasagna. There's meals like that which taste fantastic without meat, and they're cheaper as well, which is always handy.
Always useful, exactly, and sometimes healthier.
Yeah, exactly. That's the other thing. Yeah, I've got to think about that. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, Megan.
No, thank you so much. It's been great to chat. I love chatting anything wildlife, so it's always really good.
Yeah, who doesn't love a wildlife waffle?
Exactly, wildlife waffle. That's a good term for it.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye.